Morning again. Just looking at the bulletin real briefly, this is the time for the sermon. But after the sermon, we're going to have, and then after the Apostles' Creed, we're going to have a time of prayer. So if there's things that come to mind, go ahead and be thinking about those things, maybe write them down, and if you want to share with the congregation, we'd love to hear. And it doesn't just have to be prayers, it can be praises, things that you're excited about and want to share with this family of God. And so we'll have a time of prayer a little bit later, so we'll be thinking about that. Like I said, now's the time for the sermon, and for those of you who have been here and for those who haven't, we've been going through the book of Jonah kind of off and on. July was kind of a spotty month. But today I want to continue that story with you, for you. Just to prepare you for a little bit of an unconventional, untraditional style of preaching, I'm going to be telling the it's the fourth and fifth parts of Jonah's story, but I'm going to be telling that part of the story from an insider's perspective. So I'm going to try to get inside the story this morning and tell you about what happened to Jonah next. If you remember the story of Jonah, he is a guy called by God very suddenly to go to a place he does not want to go. It's like a person from Ledyard being called to go to New York City and preach to all 5 boroughs. And no, Lord, I could never do that. I don't speak their language. That's a busy, complicated place. I could never do that. But nevertheless, Jonah is called. He doesn't go, though. He boards a ship. As you know, God sends a storm on that ship, on that sea, and they end up throwing Jonah overboard. And I told that story a little bit. And then Jonah finds himself cramped. If you thought living on a submarine was cramped, try to live inside of a fish for 3 days and 3 nights, underwater inside of a fish. And that's what Jonah does. He survives it, and he makes the fish really sick, is the way I told it. And the fish vomits Jonah up on the land. Next thing Jonah knows is that he's on the shore. He recognizes the shoreline, and this time the word of the Lord comes to him a second time, and he goes. So he goes to Nineveh. And this part of the story I'm going to tell from not Jonah's perspective, but from one of the shepherds in Nineveh. My name is George. If you know anything about the name George, George literally means worker of the earth, cultivator, farmer, worker of the land. I'm not a farmer. I am from Nineveh, was born there. I'm a herdsman. That's what I'm going to call myself. I'm a shepherd. I take care of the royal flocks and herds of the king of Nineveh. But I'm a country boy at heart, so I really like the fact that most of my life, most of my work takes place outside of the city walls. Nineveh is a huge city, about 120,000 people, about the size of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm here from the past to tell you about Jonah, of course, but I know about Cedar Rapids. A town of Cedar Rapids' size in my time period would be a metropolis. It would be a huge city, and that's what Nineveh is. It's a gigantic city, surrounded by a gigantic wall. It's a city we're all very proud of. It's a city that we helped build, even though we're country folk. We're shepherds, herdsmen, farmers. So was my father, so was my grandfather. But I appreciate the fact that I only have to go to Nineveh on occasion. Administrative business takes me to Nineveh every once in a while. I meet with the king. I'm a young man. I'm only 24. I went to Nineveh State. I studied agriculture, a little bit of agronomy, but my specialty is livestock, the royal flocks and the royal herds. I help oversee the breeding. So on one hand, I admire Nineveh. Nobody can avoid admiring Nineveh. It's a modern, upbeat, big, growing city. On the other hand, I'm a country boy. And whether it's out of ignorance or just my small town mentality, Nineveh is busy, it's fast-paced, it's complicated. The streets, the way of life, it's a little bit scary sometimes. And in my humble opinion, it's a little bit corrupt. And I don't mean on a leadership level. I'm not saying the king is a bad guy. I'm talking more about the brokenness of the city. It's a violent city. You guys have heard of Chicago, right? Again, I'm here from the past, in the present day, telling you about Jonah. You've heard of Chicago, the gun violence. Last year, there were about 800 gun-related homicides in Chicago. This year, there's already been about half that. That's Chicago. That's also Nineveh. A very violent city. A beautiful city, but a broken city. And that's why when Jonah came to visit us, everyone remembers that visit. There's no one who doesn't remember the sound of Jonah's voice, the content of his message. He trudged back and forth down city streets and city lanes, the city squares, the street corners. He went inside businesses. He talked to people. And somehow, all 120,000 people heard Jonah's message. Come rain or shine, Jonah was out for 3 days, because it takes 3 days to get across the city. Come rain or shine, Jonah was representing, proclaiming God's word. And at first, we laughed. Who is this guy? Who does he think he is what we thought. This foreign prophet representing a foreign God, threatening to destroy us if we don't mend our wicked ways. His message was, yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. Who do you think you are, Jonah? One guy, no army. We don't know who you are. We should be threatening you. We're Nineveh, a great city to God. And yet he came, and I'm not going to lie, we laughed at him. We abused him a little bit. We hurled insults at him. Even the king laughed. We laughed at the wrath, as people do now. But over those 3 days, something changed. Why did Jonah's message resonate with us? Why did his mission succeed? And I think you guys need to hear this morning. It wasn't the doom and the gloom of the message that yet 40 days and you will be overthrown. It wasn't the doom and gloom. It was the compassion. It was the conviction. The prophet spoke with conviction, and his message was a message of compassion. One thing that he said really stuck out to me. I remember I heard him preach. Jonah said, God told me to tell you guys, Nineveh's in a bad way. They're in a bad way, and I can't ignore it any longer. I can't ignore it any longer. We're in a bad way, and God said, I can't ignore it any longer. Any God who would make a statement like that is worth following. A compassionate God. A God who sees a city and a people in a bad way and says, I can't ignore it. I can't ignore it any longer. I'm going to send to them my prophet. And so we laughed at first, but as time went on, the message made an impact on us. We knew the king was serious. Everyone knew the king was serious because of two things. First, the king got up from his throne. He removed his royal robes. He stripped off his embroidered garments. He put on sackcloth, which is like burlap. And then he sat down in ashes. This is something that the king only does in the case or the event of a national tragedy, a national crisis, like the loss and the death of a dignitary or the prime minister, or if a battle is being lost or a war is being lost. Only in the event of a national crisis or tragedy or loss does the king do something like that. So we knew he was serious. We were all paying attention at this point. And then the second thing was the king made a proclamation, an edict. And it said, you've all got to fast and pray. It was a proclamation of fasting and prayer. But it wasn't just fasting for the men, women, and children of Nineveh. It included the livestock, the animals, the cattle, the very animals that I help oversee. And this is what really caught my attention. First, you cannot imagine what a task it is to find burlap for 10,000 cattle. And then to watch these animals suffer for a full day. We didn't feed them because the king said we couldn't and we shouldn't. And at first I was angry about this. So if this God is so compassionate, why does he withhold the food from the animals? Okay, I get it with the people fasting and praying, but what's up with the animals? But the more I thought about it, and the more I heard about Jonah's God, that he wasn't just one of the gods, the more I came to realize that there was something here. God is the creator of all. Your God, and now my God that I have come to worship. He's the creator of all things. That means humans and animals. It means that God doesn't make junk. And God doesn't junk what he makes. He cares very much about everything that he has made, including the animals. And that's why the fast included the animals. Because God wanted to save not just the people, but the animals. And as somebody who works with animals for a living, this really made an impression on me. I thought, this has got to be the right God. The real creator. The real life giver. So compassionate, not only towards man, but also towards beasts. Your own scriptures say, Psalm 30, that God saves man and beast alike. I thought that was pretty cool. What happened after that was basically like a funeral, a visitation, a funeral, a wake. The whole city dressed in sackcloth and ashes. Some of us even shaved our heads as a sign that we were sorry. Sorry for the way we had acted, the way we had treated each other, the violence, the brokenness of our city, our neglect of the poor, our oppression, our evil talk. Whatever we had done, we were sorry for it. And there was a lot to be sorry for. It wasn't just one family, one individual grieving for one family or one individual. It was a whole city. It was like the king himself had died and we were all grieving. That's what it was like. We were sorry. In this case, we grieved our wicked ways. And it's amazing the blessing that followed. God came to our town. God came to our city. It was so evident. Blessing came. God came. He turned towards us. We turned towards him. And God left a blessing behind him. God did not do what he said he was going to do, which was overthrow our city. And that's how we knew we had chosen wisely. God did not do what he said he would do. And that was the ultimate vindication of Jonah's message. We knew we had chosen wisely. But when we looked at Jonah after these 3 days of preaching, we expected him to be happy too, to be celebrating with us, to be rejoicing with us. But Jonah's face looked terrible. It was disfigured, very unhappy. We expected him to rejoice with us. We had repented. The message had succeeded, and God had blessed us. But no, Jonah clambered up the mountain next to the city that overlooks our town. He clambered up there. He sat down, And from what we could tell, he began to sulk. We expected the prophet to be overjoyed, but from what we could tell, he was angry. I gotta go now, but stay tuned. I'm going to tell you the rest of the story next time. Catch you later. My name's George. See you around.